Thank you, and thanks so much for the invitation to talk here tonight. It was both a little bit of fear-provoking, I think, when I received the invitation from Irene and Fermin. But preparing for tonight, it was actually also a little bit funny to kind of walk back on memory lanes of the past 40 years and to try and find some kind of narrative in my experiences so far. This snapshot of JAJA cultures and nationalities shows quite well that at JAJA it's many different experiences and influences that kind of contribute to the work and the projects that we do. So and my experiences are kind of one among many. I'm the one there in the left top, the Swiss-Danish hybrid. I grew up in the northeastern part of Switzerland at the Bodensee. In English it's called Lake of Constance. And the one thing I want to talk about or tell you about my childhood is that I'm a part of a bigger group also there. I have many siblings. My mother passed away quite early in my childhood, and when my father fell in love again some years later, I both got my two younger brothers and me. We both got our current mother, but also with her 2 older sisters and an older brother. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think this relationship that we have, where there is, on one hand both harsh and very direct critique, but at the same time also like unlimited love and always a backup. I think that's a very great starting point to, from a very safe place, kind of start to explore and go on adventures. My first encounter with the profession of as an architect is with this building, and with the pictures of this woman. This is my grandmother. Her name is Susie Müller-Gehrig. She was an architect that graduated in the early 50s and has in the late 50s started her own practice. She was building family homes and smaller cultural projects in Switzerland in this kind of brutalist style. She had like some kind of elements that always reappeared in her buildings. Among those are, for example, these bigger terraces and cantilevering roofs that kind of bind outside and inside together. And she always worked with kind of these floating interior spaces where there was kind of a fine transition between the more private and the more open parts of a home. So there was these split level solutions in section, and with this furniture like room dividing elements rather than kind of everything walled in and divided by each other. As a teenager, I stumbled upon this text that she wrote. It's called the Profession of an Architect, in German, the female architect, die Architektin. And it was like in the early 50s when she wrote this text right after graduating. She was 28 years old, about why the job or the profession as an architect is kind of super obvious for women to choose. And the main argument in the text was that, of course, women have great knowledge to all the processes that kind of happen in a house, and that's why it makes sense that they should not just furnish the house, but actually decide where the light comes in and what kind of spaces surround it, and so on. And I remember to be quite provocated, like why should there be kind of domestic chores that kind of that define like how good you would be as a practicing architect. Later on, I of course realized, this was written some 20 years before women in Switzerland got the right to vote. So in many sense, she has really been a first mover. She was like one out of two women at school studying her year, and it was a very rare thing to start the office on your own in those days. She did that because she couldn't combine family work and professional work when working for someone else, so she just decided to start on her own. She unfortunately also died like before I was born, so I never got the chance to talk to her and talk about her experiences as an architect. So I grew up with these pictures that somehow created this very romantic picture in my head of what it was to be an architect, sitting there thinking about how everything, the home, should kind of be put together and going on site. Kind of, I heard these stories that she would like select the perfect timber panels for the in situ concrete cast. So with this kind of very idealized image, I started at the architecture school at the ETH in Zurich, which I have to admit was very much of a contrast. It felt like being starting at this technical campus. It felt like quite a, what is it called, almost like a little bit of shock, both extremely fantastic to get kind of into this a fantastic world of architecture, at the same time also kind of a little bit completely exhausting, I think is maybe the right word to say. Starting with like a curriculum of some 30 courses over in the beginning of the kind of first couple of years, really showed me also what, or like really kind of opened up kind of the, you know, the immense aspects of architecture and the work as an architect. I had some fantastic professors, as you can see from these pictures of some of the houses. But it was also a place where there was a lot of kind of do's and don'ts on what would be the right and good thing to do and what you should not do. In that sense, it was for me like really opening up kind of a whole new world when I then decided to start my internship in Denmark. It was actually kind of coincidental that it turned out to be Denmark. I wanted to go to Stockholm, but somehow no one replied to my mails, and then I ended up at this office here, which at the time was quite unknown, at least in Switzerland. But that turned out is a bit different today. Both Bjarke and Julien are very known, and especially also in Switzerland. For me, it was kind of really an eye-opener on how like producing architecture, being part of a team, also really can be a lot of joy and fun, and how things really can get to other levels in this like explorative process. Where also in many ways building is not just necessarily like one of the main things that was so great as an experience at the time was that it's not like about being confined by what is the building, what is the urban space, what is where's the boundary to the city, but like that these things can kind of flow together, so a roof can also become a space for play, and a mountain can appear in a Copenhagen city development. It was actually some years later when I for the first time visited CESC by Lina Bobardi in Sao Paulo, where I felt that the kind of Swiss world and the Danish world, like the sensitive material focus together with the more kind of like playful and very much human-centered approach of Danish architecture came together in one building, and that's still today also a very important reference for for my work or our work. But back to Copenhagen, we have it was like in those early years at Plot and Big, where many of my friends also today I have met, and it was those in those times where maybe start differently. It was like from the beginning, like a big love to the city. I felt very much at home here. So staying and returning was very much a natural thing to do. And it was also at Plot where I met my two partners at the office now, Jan and Jakob. When preparing for this lecture here, I was also asked, how come you actually decided to start an office together? And to be honest, I cannot really say what like the main reason was, but we collaborated very well together. We were friends, and at the time, it just seemed like the natural thing to do. Okay, then you start your own practice, and it's maybe also a picture of these like mid-2000s, some years before the finance crisis hit, and everything was possible, and it looked so easy when Julia and Bjarke did it. So why not? Turns out it's not so easy for everyone, but it was kind of what started our adventure. Firmin, by the way, the clock there is not working. But so you just have to stop me. Yes, but what has been very important for us from the beginning has been the competitions. That has been the thing that both in many ways started the office. This is, I call it the baby picture of Jan and Jakob. It's when they got shortlisted in the competition for the Stockholm Public Library, and got into the second phase there, and was kind of the first of many bigger open competitions where we were shortlisted or got a prize or won a first prize. And these competitions was really a way for us to both develop a network of like clients and collaborators, but also a way to kind of develop our architectural ideas and thinking, like ideas that kind of appeared in one project we took up again in the next one, and so on. So like exploring these tasks, often of course for like public important buildings, was something that kind of was a driver for the development of our work. And this thing also that it's not like that you get the chance to kind of produce it in this like bubble where you can kind of test out different ideas and then synthesize that into a project that you then present is like I think still a way we very much enjoy in when working as a kind of a working process. It was some years ago when we decided, okay, maybe now would be the time to think a little bit about how we want to push, in what direction the office should be kind of pushed, and is there like something that can be a little bit of a what is called guideline, or like something that can focus a little bit more on what we work with. We went to this beautiful place in the South German mountains, and have tried to and try to kind of work with a strategy that really helps us also to kind of focus on how we develop ourselves and our competencies at the office to kind of contribute to a more sustainable way of like push towards more sustainable building sector with the themes of mobility and the transformation and renovation of existing structures, and with the use of bio-based materials on when we build new. That's like elements that we kind of at the moment and the past years really have tried to kind of further educate ourselves with. And also to try to kind of choose that as a help to when we decide what to do. Besides all these years at the office, teaching has also been something I have kind of been doing on and off, and it's something I really appreciate, to get this like free space and bubble next to the office work, to kind of think about like lift the view a little bit, and have discussions both with students and colleagues on what kind of pushes our profession. So as part of this, I have together with Dean Simpson and Jos Grotens and others produced this atlas of the Copenhagens. And it has for me also been really kind of an important work, like always developing a very critical sense towards the whole topic of sustainability. As architects, we kind of really work hard to kind of produce visions that can lead towards a more sustainable future, but to keep kind of a very critical view on that is important. So with this book, we looked into what are kind of what it means to sustainability in the kind of context of Copenhagen as an urban territory and as a city. Maybe if I go back, I remember like this, I mean, the teaching that was like a side job, but somehow as an architect you end there where you always like the smallest things become anyways like immense tasks. So I remember when producing this book, I promised myself never again to do a book because it was such an intense process. And there it's of course important to kind of, or it's important for me to have this free space where you can kind of step out from the everyday and where you have experiences that also put the everyday into a context. And living in Switzerland, that was the hiking in mountains, and still do that sometimes. But here in Denmark, it's the sea and sailing. I have already as a child, we often spent the summer vacation on the lake. But as you can see from this kids painting, somehow the sailing was a very small aspect of it. It was more about the swimming and hanging out on the boat. So in Copenhagen, luckily there is the female sailing club, which helped me to bring my sailing skills up to speed. And I was so fortunate to kind of was invited by Jacob's father to sail his boat called Susanne Himmelblå. Susanne Himmelblå is a spækhugger. It means killer whale in English. It's a Danish boat type. And Jacob's father, Christian, he's also an architect. So, of course, he has a boat that is designed by an architect. It's this pointy, I think it's called pointy vessel, or the pointy shape of the vessel. It has references back to old Viking ships, but also to some of the timber boats that Jørn Utsson's father has designed. So it's the boat with a lot of history and a fantastic sailing boat for both like sailing alone, but also with others. And sailing also has become a very, what is it called, appreciated JAJA summer activity, where we have been on different trips. Some years ago, I took one of these decisions that is very easy to take because you don't really know what you start, and then first later on you figure out that it's a little bit harder than what you expected. But I took a sailing trip around the island of Sealand alone, and that was a bit more intense than expected, but it's a really nice experience of kind of very meditative and just yourself with the wind and the waves, and at the same time like also really challenging because of the focus in all the maneuvers that you kind of had to do alone. On that trip, when kind of surrounding the southern part of Møn, I almost fell out of the boat because I saw this like super exciting ruin which had the perfect placement and just looked super adventurous. I've always very much appreciated to kind of explore ruins, so I went back there to check it out, and of course also contacted the owner. It turns out they have been contacted by many architects, but don't really want to do anything with it. I thought there could be something for the office, but no. But then some years later, my boyfriend Morten and we bought this ruin here, which is not so far away from the other one. and have since started to turn it into an even bigger ruin. I think you can say eventually it's supposed to become a home. And it's a kind of a building process that involves a lot of like friends and family also, and also a process that became slowed down a little bit after we got a daughter. But it's something that kind of takes up a lot of attention in our life. And it is also for me a great laboratory to build with different materials that I'm not so used with building from our practice so far, but where we kind of try to go new ways. When working with bio-based materials, one thing is like timber structures, but the other thing is to use different kind of insulation materials. Here, for example, with hemp lime and with seagrass, which we build walls and with and insulate kind of the roof with. So getting the chance to both build with these materials hands-on yourself, but also try and live with these materials and figure out, okay, how do they perform with humidity, the smell, what does it take as a process is really great, and is something that that kind of that really also is contributing to what we do at work, and to kind of become more what do you call that, familiar with these materials that we try to push. And that brings me to my last point here. When wanting to kind of push the building industry to go new ways, I think as an architect it's really important that we not only master kind of the language of the more phenomenological aspects and concept design and like a programmatic kind of conceptual approach, but also the more kind of technical elements like the whole fire issue, for example, in terms of bio-based materials is kind of a world of its own, but also like talking about different carbon footprints and how these materials perform. And that's really a thing that that needs a team and that you cannot do yourself. So I think when talking about architects, not architecture, I think the architect team producing architecture is really key. And there I must say I feel very lucky every day, because I have both very talented and very nice and sweet colleagues that kind of are part of our journey. And I think that is what really is kind of making the major part of being a practicing architect. Yeah, so that I think was my last slide. So thank you for the time. And
thank you for your talk. And it was so difficult to prepare ourselves for the conversation with you, because there were almost no interviews talking about your influences and biographic stuff and so on. So thank you, and also so nice to get to know this story about Susie, which was an amazing woman. And you said you had architecture idealized at that time. Do you have today architecture idealized?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels very much like a roller coaster. So, and I think that's so. It can be both, you know, all the problems, which probably all architects in this audience know can appear, can really be tough. But very often I get this like super high where it's like, okay, I mean, it's the most fantastic job in the world, because you get to meet people and collaborate with people and like see things and learn things constantly and get new impressions all the time. So I think it's something that that never is static and all the time the same. So in that sense, I think I'm still
meeting people and collaborating with people. That's cool. But what's the other side which makes you be like,
Yeah, but that is all the...
What kind of experiences make you feel disappointed about architecture?
Disappointed. That's maybe the word. But that is everything from like building problems on a construction site to budgets that are exceeded, to all the nice things that appear, because architecture, it's like it's in this nice spot between art and kind of applied. Technical thing. So so in that thing, it's like hard to kind of, or it is a nice challenge to kind of like meet your own ambitions and the reality.
And sorry, that was the water. Sorry. And you were collaborating together. Now you have an office. With how many people you have in the office?
Today we are, I think, 22.
22, with great projects. And at the beginning, seeing other colleagues, or the office where you were kind of made it looked easy. You said, what would you have loved to know before founding your own practice?
I think it's good not to know, because otherwise you would not have found it.
So just go for it without not knowing.
Go for it, don't know, yeah.
So now doing a book is very difficult, but...
Yeah, I think that's maybe the one thing I have learned, that if you want to do things, then it's good not to know, because otherwise you don't do it. But
Is there any kind of sides of the profession you'll try to avoid today? So kind of, don't know.
I think what I talked a little bit about with our kind of 3 focus areas there. I think what has been really great the past couple of years is that by pushing these areas, we also can work with projects within these with these kind of briefs, which is really great. It of course makes it like a lot of fun to work, because we feel like we push for something that is bigger and something that we really enjoy. So the things that projects that are kind of have a very different focus and very different ambitions than that I would like to try and to do not too much of. But,
okay. Couple of quick questions. You mentioned, so you started with family, but now you have your own family here. How do you feel being also from your family far away? How it is?
Yeah, as I said, we are 6. 6 altogether, brothers and sisters, and then my parents, and there's like a lot of grandchilds and so on now. So somehow I'm of course in frequent contact with my family, and then some of them are often here. And I'm there. So somehow it still feels quite connected, even though the distance is a bit bigger. And I must say also, like, I feel in many ways that Jan Jacob's family and also the office has become like my Danish family. So in that sense, you can see families in different spheres.
What was not clear to me is about sailing here, and now it's freezing outside. What do you do during the winter?
Yeah, actually, Susanne Himmelblå is on land right now, but she has also been in the water for some winters. So
you keep doing it.
In winter it gets
for Spanish people that will be.
Yeah, but in winter it gets dark at 4 here, so you pull back, but then enjoy the light in the summer and.
A good way to step out, as you said.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Copenhagen is it's so accessible. Like you can go down to the harbor and then you can be gone within 15 minutes, half an hour, which is really great. And I think that's also in that trip around Zealand, that was, I think, the most empowering or like the most uplifting thing about it, that I realized, okay, I mean, basically I could just go down to the harbor and sail off, and then can do something else.
Nice. Yeah,
it's very good to have that in the back of your mind.
Copenhagen is a super nice city, and it's for us always special to be here. Kathrin, thank you a lot for your super nice presentation, and later we continue with the roundtable discussion. So thank you, Kathrin.